think we're live on YouTube as well. Hey, Lee, how are you doing? Okay. I don't think Lee can hear me yet. So the way this will work, we got the chat. So go ahead and let us know where you're coming in from in the chat. We'd love to know where you guys are at. And we've got also, there's like 500 things you got to do when you're doing a live stream to put it all together. And so let us know where you're from. And then we have the Q&A section. So if you have a question, go ahead and ask it. Ask the question, not in chat, but in the question box. And then we'll answer the questions that way. If that sounds good to you guys. So let me just shoot an email to Will.
I already
so he
did.
has it as well. Oh, Lee, I can't hear you. I wonder if it's my...
Testing 1, 2.
There we are. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I sent Will an email.
Okay, great. Perfect. So I think, so here we've got, people from all over Florida, Michigan, Colorado, San Diego. We've got Provo, Utah. That's where I used to live. Johannesburg, never been there, but I have a friend who lived there for a little bit.
Hey, Mallory from Colorado. Which part of Colorado are you from?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about a move to Colorado Springs. Okay.
Colorado would be cool.
Do you like it or no?
Of course she likes it. What's not to like in Colorado Springs?
Yeah, if you grew up there, you hate it. People hate where they grow up typically.
Yes, but it's getting too big.
That's a subtle way of her saying for me to stay out. That was nice. She said, all you people, stop coming here and ruining our beautiful nature. Shannon's asking if I just moved to Tennessee. A couple years back. I've been here 3 years. I'm like a Rolling Stone. Gather no moss. I like moving around. I bought a mountain bike and now I need to buy the mountain. I need a mountain.
Some people have the mountain first and then get the mountain bike, but Lee's the other way around.
That's not very good. Yeah, I buy a product and then I move based on that product. Not saying it's...
Lee's gonna then get a boat in Colorado and then have to move to
ocean again.
Get a sailboat. Oh boy. Okay, so before we get into questions, should we just talk about Children's Book Pro, why we made it, why it's the thing we're doing right now, how come?
Sure.
We already have some questions that we answered in the video on the front page of Children's Book Pro, but we can kind of go over some of that stuff again. So
let's talk about why we made it. Why did we make it again? We made our lives a lot more difficult. We had too much free time. And so we thought we want to be recording every day of our life for 6 months.
Right.
When you guys see how much content is in this class, you're just at first we were like, oh, maybe they could take it again if they wanted to get more out of it. No, you're probably going to have to watch these things where there's so much information.
Luckily, they have lifetime access to it. So
that's true.
So that's good. Here's what it was. Will and I did a children's book course 7 or 8 years ago. And we put everything we knew into that course then, and it was pretty good. But at that time, I'd only done 3 children's books, I think. And in the last 10 years, I've done a book, maybe 2 books every year. So I've gained all this knowledge since then. And we kept looking at that course and being like, oh, I wish we could do it better. I wish we could do a little bit different. I wish we could refine it. Even on the technical side, I wish we had better video, better audio. And so this was always just kind of this thing that we wanted to work on. But we knew it was like this beast that we couldn't slay with the amount of resources and time that we had. Then we brought on Lee, and Lee's been working with us, on SVS Learn for like 5 or 6 years. It wasn't long after that. And he's got all this great children's book knowledge. And so it was always this talk among us, like, we should do a children's book course. Yeah, we should do a children's book course. And what's interesting too is our children's book course that's on SVS Learn right now. Really, I think it gets a little bit lost in the shuffle there. Like
yeah, that square looks the same as a 30-minute webinar that we did. You know, you can't tell that that's 20 hours worth of stuff you're going to have to cover, but it wasn't that structured either. It was like a big videos, right? And
it was
this one we really wanted to structure.
What it essentially was a live webinar we did over the course of a few weeks that we just recorded and turned it into a class. And so this one is very much specific to something that you can record and rewatch again, and the audio is good, and the content, the information is really dialed in. It's very streamlined, and it's just better. It's just a better system that we've got. We've figured it out. And there's actually things, listening to Will and Lee go in and talk about it, like I'm learning things that I want to do differently on my next children's book too. So I'm learning some things as well. So it's like, I think the reason for it now is coming out of COVID and going into like this next phase of where do we go from here. We just felt like now was the time where we had time in our schedule to do it. And so we've just been clearing out a couple days every week since February. And now most recently in May, every single day of the week to record this and to work on it. So it's all new content, all new stuff.
We're going deep on it. It's not just learning, like I'm learning a ton from Will and Jake. I mean, that's just been a constant thread. Like every time each of us gives a lecture, the other people are like, oh, that's how you do it. Oh, here's how I do it. You know, and that's happening during the lectures too, because all three of us are present during each lecture. It's not just a one person presenting and then that's it, like you normally get. We really are bouncing around, and we'll ask questions to each other, like, why'd you do it that way? Or is there a better way to do it this way or whatever? But then also just prepping some of this stuff for the course. I've taught children's books a ton of times, and I've never gone as deep as I have now. Like even the lecture that I'm recording now, which is on when to use a spot illustration, a single page and a spread, never broken it down to how do you use that to tell your narrative in a better way? How do you add emotion to your story by just how you lay it out? Not even talking about what's in the picture, but how can you change it? You know, how can you slow down your pacing? How can you speed up your pacing? How can you pause for dramatic effect? All this stuff is, you know, we've just had enough time to where we're like, let's make the perfect class. Right. And so now it's like, we can't leave anything out. That's why we're filming so much stuff now. We're like, hey, wait, we can't, there's this little thing. And then you look at it under a microscope and you're like, oh wait, there's a lot of stuff, to pull out of that little piece of information, and we need to talk about it. So the class is going to be 400 hours long.
No. But it's gonna feed you. I think it's gonna feed you for a long time. The other thing too is, hey Will, welcome. Hey. Good to see you. Hey. Will made it through traffic, so that was good. He got here.
Sometimes you're not in total control of your life.
That's right.
You have a wife, you have traffic lights, you have other people trying to wreck into you as you're trying to make your meeting.
Yeah,
it's a video game.
I was gonna say though, before we really started digging into this class, we went online and just started searching how to make children's books, how to do on Google.
What else is out there? Yeah.
What else is out there? Because honestly, we're like, if there's already the perfect class, we'll just direct everybody towards that, right? And what we found were, you either have to sign up at a community college or get into an art school to then take the one class that college offers on children's books, right? And there you're being taught by someone who may have done a children's book 10 years ago, right? Or maybe, maybe they're kind of working in children's books now, but their main job is teaching college. Or it's such a condensed version of the course. When you look at the syllabus, if they had the syllabus posted, we're just like, I don't think people are going to get what they need from something like that, if you even have access to attending that class live. And then from the online courses that we saw, it was like, here's a 3-hour course, or here's a 4-hour course on how I made my children's book. And so you get to see one person's sort of like work process of how they made their one children's book. And maybe there's a children's book assignment on there. And we just weren't seeing like the kind of depth that we thought people needed. And we knew with the three of us teaching together with 3 different styles, different art directors and editors that we worked with, that we would be able to bring, like, just show you a broader map of how a children's book is made, how it works in the industry and stuff like that. So
here's another, can I jump in?
Yeah, please.
So the way that, because we've all taught illustration at art schools, university art schools, and the way that it works is, like you said, you either have a teacher who is a full-time teacher and they're not making children's books, or I know of a couple people, myself included, who were asked to teach adjunct, and we are illustrating children's books. But the way that it works usually is they ask you to teach a few weeks to a month before the semester starts, and then you go in as an adjunct, and there is no textbook for making children's books. There just isn't. So you go in, and what do? You're as an adjunct, you're paid, at least for me, I was paid $3,000, $3,300 for the whole semester. If you break that down, it's not, you do it for the love of it. You don't do it for the money, and so the problem there is you realize that just by showing up as a person who has done children's books, you can answer any questions that your students have, and you can critique their work. You can give them an assignment, and you can critique their work, but you have no real instruction other than the lectures that you make up, and then you're not getting enough money. So I always found that after teaching for 9 years, I finally had my lectures pretty much figured out, and then I moved on because we started really getting into SVS. It took me 9 years to get my lectures for the children's book class, and it just took it anyway. My point being is, if you take it from an art school, and this includes the more expensive art schools too, they don't do what we finally wanted to do, which was to break it. We made a huge outline of everything that you need to learn and need to know to do a children's book, and then we divided it up between us. And we're like, okay, you take this, and you take that, and I'll take this, and you take that, and we'll cross over on this, and we'll take the, and the power of all 3 of us working for months, we finally were able to create all the lectures. There's no way that someone teaching in school has that kind of time. And like you said, it's like one perspective at the end of the day. It's one person's perspective instead of 3.
I do want to share my screen really quick. Let's see. I want to make sure I got the right thing here. Okay. So let's say there's no textbook on making children's books. We actually found this book, How to Be a Children's Book Illustrator, A Guide to Visual Storytelling. And it's a pretty darn good book. And so if you're like wanting to round out this course, or maybe you're not ready for this course, I recommend this book. But then again, how good are you at learning from a book?
Well, when we first got that book, we're like, okay, this book maybe is what people need, and we don't need to teach the class. But then when we actually went into the content, it goes heavy into some of the beginner stages of how to make a character and how to lay out a scene. No topic on the dummy. I mean, we have like 4 weeks of lecture on just creating how page to page and how that's going to work. There's nothing in this book about that. It just says, okay, you learn some character, you learn some environment. Now go make a dummy. Yeah. We all know that that's not going to work. And it also is in one style. I mean, that's been an interesting thing, is like each of us is teaching a different sort of technique. I'm teaching kind of a stylized approach to how to do it, and Jake's teaching more animation / volume drawing kind of style, and Will is just kind of peppered in between us, kind of bouncing around and covering different areas between those two. And so it's pretty interesting. It's just totally different. You can't get it. I couldn't teach the class by myself. So,
Yeah.
so we realized that I agree with Jake. That one's a good one. I think probably having 3 or 4 books on children's illustration is going to be your best bet, because it's the same thing. Then you can pull from, oh, these 3 people are saying this one thing, just showing it in a different way. You can see which one kind of fits to your style better. But they still don't break it down like we do. Like the stylizing your illustration lecture that I give, I figured out, a stylization can be anything, from slightly changing a drawing to completely, making a weird drawing.
Yeah.
So what's the 8 common things in between those 2 things, and list them out. Okay, if you do these 8 things, you'll end up with a stylized drawing. You can change, you can leave one off and go more towards realism.
Right.
We really do a deep dive in all of that stuff.
So if you look here, and there is a question from Maggie. She said, I'm nervous. This is a stupid question. No stupid questions here. Don't be nervous. But is this course going to address the actual image making and illustration technique, or is it more about the process and non-image making parts of making a children's book? And will SVS will remain more of the illustration technique classes? So that's a good question. So I want to just show you, you can come, go to childrensbookpro.com and scroll down to the course curriculum, and you can come in here and you can open these up and you can see exactly what kind of lectures you're going to get. So we go into the manuscript. What is a manuscript? How do you break it down? How do you split it into pages? Okay. We then go into characters, analyzing characters from different books, drawing kids versus adults. So there is a lot on how do you actually make images on a page regarding to characters. So like Lee gets into stylizing characters. Here's how you would do a stylized character. Mine is more, how do you keep that character consistent, drawn from different angles? We do the same thing with environments and props. And now we're working, these are the stuff that we're recording this week and next week is how do you put those images on a page so that your storytelling reads well. Now we knew that we couldn't dig in deep on here's how you add light and shadow to make a character look realistic. That's something ideally coming into this, but if you don't know it, that's why we threw in, when you get this course, we threw in these classes right here, how to draw everything, how to draw in perspective, light and shadow, another class on character development, another class on how do you draw things from different proportions or different angles, so that you can pause and you can be like, oh, I just feel like I need to brush up on this. My characters aren't looking good enough. You can go back into this and you can learn some of this stuff and then get back into taking, back into the stream of the course. So I hope that answers your question. Should we answer a couple of these other ones?
Yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. It's going to take, probably this is a good one. Probably the most common question will be, after finishing the course as an absolute beginner who can draw, how long will it take to become a professional, and what would be a course to gig steps? What if I'm older than 35 or 40? Thank you very much. That last part is the easiest part to answer. It doesn't even matter at all. Nobody asks your age when you submit a dummy. Nobody asks your age when you do a painting. So you're good to go with the age thing. That doesn't matter at all. Now, how long will it take to become a pro? There's an absolute million different answers to that question.
There's so many variables, right?
If you do what's in the class and you do it at a professional level, you could get work with what we're going to assign in the class. Now, it just depends on how quickly you learn, how much time you have to dedicate to it as well. I mean, some people may be, true beginner level, but have just a ton of time, and, you're going to dig in for a year and do the class multiple times. Maybe you're going to be quicker than somebody who has a full-time job and a family. So, and it depends on what style you bring to the table too. I do want to back up a little bit though about the technique question, because this kind of plays into this part of the question too. The one thing that we don't truly go into in this particular class is going from the sketch when you've already got a whole book done and the dummy and the layout. We're not going into finishing paintings because there's so many different paint techniques. So this is not a painting class. That last step is going to be so wildly individual between each person. But that comes into play too with this question, is what's your level of finish once you've got your layout done and your image all figured out, your lighting study done? What's that next step look like for you?
And ideally, the ideal student here, and hopefully I'm saving someone some money, but the ideal student here is they've made illustrations. They know how to make an appealing character. They know how to make an illustration on the page. Maybe they've been in our critique arena for SVS and they've entered, several times in the critique arena, regardless if they've made it in the top 16 or not. But they know how to do that. But it's sort of, they're just mystified at how do you go from that to a 32-page children's book? Mm-hmm. How do you tell a story with your art? How do you take whatever abilities that you have now and actually make an engaging image, one with a focal point, one with a good composition, one that tells a story? That student, I think, after taking this class, if you are able to put together a dummy, do the 3 finished illustrations, round out the portfolio you already have with some illustrations, you could be looking at, like, ideally, if your work is good and professional, even if you haven't gotten work yet, you could be looking at submitting stuff to art directors and editors, and within 6 months or a year, be having a book deal, right? Like, I think that's absolutely reasonable. And so I think that would be like the ideal student. If there's some rough areas in your artwork, there's some rough areas in your storytelling, and you just need to work on it some more, extend that out more. This isn't like a definitely not a get rich quick type of thing. But it is, I think, the clearest path. Like, if you just are sick of like chopping through the jungle, going down wrong paths and not knowing what, I think this is the clearest path to get where you want to go.
And I do want to address a different kind of student as well, and that's the semi-pro or the pro. So I've been getting this email a lot just privately that says, "Hey, I'm already working. Is this for me? I'd like to brush up. I could take this class, Jake could take this class, and Will could take this class, and it would not be too basic for us." I mean, I know that if I were to take this class, I would get a ton out of it. Now, the best part of that, as for the semi-pro or the recent graduate or the working pro, is you're going to be able to take the stuff that we're teaching and apply it immediately. So it could show up in your portfolio literally by the end of class, and you're already either making images that you're more happy with or telling a better story. And so it really is for the full gamut. It's hard to make a class like that and to make that claim legitimately, that we can fit like literally the beginner and the working pro into the same class, but we really can, just because of the nature of this subject matter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like this comment from Gina just in the chat. She says, "I'm in art school now, illustration major, and the one class offered about children's books is great, but barely touches on half the things you guys are going to hit. I submit my portfolio for review tomorrow, and I signed up for your class last night. What's another $500 after the amount I just spent on art school?"
It's monopoly money at that point.
It's the basic. I said it before, but I'm going to say it again. It's the basic difference is, in school, you feel like as a teacher, your value to the students is the access they have.
Bring your mic a little closer to you.
Oh yeah, the access that they have to you. Mm-hmm. And the ability that you have to just kind of roll into class and, for lack of a better word, wing it, but they can ask you specific questions and you can answer them. If you illustrate children's books, but there is no financial incentive. I mean, there's just no incentive to create the map, the whole, to map everything out and to organize it like we did. We can't compete on that level of art school because we don't offer a degree. We have to compete with content. We have to create content that is better, quite frankly. And we're not saying that we're better than art school. What we're allowing people to do, or what we're making available, is the ability to essentially buy the dream piece of art school that isn't even for sale.
I'm going to correct that and say it is better than art school. I went through 4 years of undergrad at a premium school, and I went through grad school. I can confidently say this is better than either of those. I mean, I'm not kidding.
And I agree with you, but I would say this: if the children's book class in art school covers this, or if a section of an illustration class where they say, we're
Right,
going to
right.
do a children's book assignment, we're taking that and expanding it wide open and not leaving any stones unturned, because there wasn't anything out there like it. And it's the map that we wished we had had. All three of us have talked about that, you know, it's funny that when you interview or when you get to know friends, you know, you make friends in the children's book industry, everybody has a different way that they learned how to do this. And we all learned on the job, you know.
Yeah, on our own too. That's the weird part, is that, you know, we didn't have this community that you guys are building, and we didn't have each other, and we were all just basically struggling to answer the same questions. All of us trying to find the same answers, I guess. You know what I mean? And there's nobody showing you, so you just kind of fumble through it. I want to hit. There's two questions. One from Jason and one from Mallory. They sort of overlap, and it's asking about the Zoom sessions. The number one question we're getting is, what is the Zoom, and is it going to be a crit? And do we have the times yet? We do actually have the times. We figured that out today. It's going to be, when is it, Jake?
Thursdays. And I know Pacific time, so do the math from that. So every Thursday, 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. And we're going to divide people up essentially so we don't have people double dipping. And this is a way so we can get people, basically service people who either are working or live internationally, and you know, it's the middle of the night. We're going to divide it up into, you're either a 10 a.m. person or you're a 6 p.m. person. And so that 6 p.m. would be 9 o'clock East Coast. I can't do the math for France or UK, but
so we got one in the morning for Europe and one in the
I think it's going to be the 6 p.m. at the 10 a.m. one. So that's what's going on there, and
we're going to record each one, so you're going to get to watch it if you miss it anyway.
Yeah, and what we're doing is, these are predominantly a question and answer thing. So we, you know, as people are going through, if there's something that you are just struggling with, chances are another person is struggling with that as well. So we're going to want to answer those questions. We're going to want to do it essentially in this kind of setting. Ideally, you'll be posting your work on the Discord for feedback from other students, or just, you know, just kind of get a vibe check on how you're doing. Mm-hmm. And what I anticipate us doing is looking at the artwork posting. If we're seeing multiple common mistakes happening, taking one of those, doing a critique, a draw over of one of those, so that everybody can learn from that. Mm-hmm. It's a way to sort of streamline that. Our initial plan was to just offer this course as a go at your own pace, watch the videos, download them, have them. And we kept coming back to, like, we know we're going to get people asking questions. We know we're going to get people wanting to know, and we know we're going to get multiple questions that are the same, or the same problems popping up. And so that's when I think Lee was like, guys, we should just do like a weekly Zoom check-in for everybody, so that we can like interface and talk like this, how we're doing now, and help people along. Unfortunately, we don't have the bandwidth to do something a little more hands-on, but that's what we're working on next. So this is sort of like phase one. And phase two will be a much more hands-on mastermind, smaller cohort type of thing. But for now, this is what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm. But what's interesting about this kind of critique, sorry to cut you off, Will, what's interesting about this kind of format is that when you start art school, if you're a beginner, you think art is so individual, and how could you possibly address a couple of people and have it work for a big audience of people? I'm telling you, as a teacher at the university level, we saw literally thousands of people go through. How, especially when you're learning technique and addressing a very specific subject matter like we are here, the mistakes overlap so much that I actually made stamps for my students when they would turn stuff in. I could stamp the back of it. It would be like, your value structure needs adjusting and your perspective needs work. And those are my two stamps, my perspective stamp and the value stamp. And I had a series of like 7 stamps, and I'd say it covered almost 99% of the problems that I was seeing. So it really was an overlap. And so don't think like, oh, they didn't critique mine. The critique would last 48 hours if we were to critique everybody's, character design and stuff like that. But there'll be common elements like, your silhouette's not strong enough. The gesture's not good enough. I mean, those things are just common thread stuff. And you're going to be able to post and get feedback from hopefully this social community that we're building too. So it should be kind of like snowball rolling and help from all sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Next question. Real quick. This is the first question asked. Do students receive a certificate at the end of the course? And is there an option for splitting payments over a few months? No option for splitting payments right now. Apologize for that. The reason we're offering it at the price that we're offering it is, we feel like this is a good, fair price for what we're offering. It's actually steeply discounted because of all the extra content that we're adding. And I mean, we could look into seeing how we could do a split payment. I don't know if our software is set up to do that. Because we'd like to have that right option, now, but I don't see where it's at. As far as the certificate, I got this question in an email earlier this week too. And I understand maybe if your employer is going to pay for some professional development, you need some sort of proof that you went and did that. And perhaps we could work something out for that. But overall, there is no certificate of completion for this. Really, that is not something that is in the publishing industry. An art director doesn't go through a portfolio and then ask, do you have any certifications? They just want to see, can you illustrate? Can you do the job? They don't look for, in all of my meetings with editors, publishers, art directors, anything, have never once been asked, are you certified? What certifications have you completed, and where did you go to school, and did you complete college? Never asked that.
There is a reason why some people in some countries in Europe need a certification, and that's for tax purposes.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have one. Maybe we
not yet, but I don't see why we couldn't make one. I mean, if you complete it, you complete it. You'll get it week 10. And if that would help you guys, just let us know in the comments. That would be that's not too hard of a thing, and that actually can work with our software already anyway. So it's not that big of a deal.
Another question that's being asked a lot is, are we going to offer this again? We just don't have a schedule. We don't know. We want to see how this one goes before we make any decisions. So the plan kind of is to offer it again, but we want to see how this one goes first.
Yeah.
I will add too that we will be adding content to it. If there's something that we realize that we're missing, since you guys will own this class, it's not like it goes away for you at the end of the 10 weeks. We'll be populating this class with, if there's something we missed, it'll go in there and you'll have access to that as well.
And to that as well, if you're in the 10 a.m. session, this answers Jennifer's question. If you're in the 10 a.m. Zoom session, that will be recorded so that the 6 p.m. people can see what we talked about in the 10 a.m. one, and the 10 a.m. people can see what happened in the 6 p.m. one. So both will be recorded, both will be uploaded. Mm-hmm. And just because you're not attending it live, you'll still be able to sit back, listen to what questions were answered, see what artwork was worked on.
It really is the beauty of online teaching, where if you have a class at an art school, that time slot evaporates. If you missed class, you missed class. In this one, you can miss the Zoom session and still watch the recording and get a lot of questions answered. You just won't be able to ask your own.
Right.
But then you can go to the Discord. I mean, we have that social community on Discord, and you can ask the question there if there's some modification of it. I am seeing a lot of people asking about how much time to spend. And like Jake said, with the ideal student taking the class, I'll answer this in two ways. There's 2 students that I see, and then everything in between. There is the total, I'm going to be a pro at this no matter what, get out of my way, hungry. A weekly homework session for them, it's going to be intense to keep it up and to do portfolio level work in real time with the class. You're going to have to be really dedicated, and it's going to take time. There's no possible way around that. So that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is somebody who's really busy. Hey, I'm interested in this. I want to attend, some of the Zoom sessions and do it live. This person might even just watch the class and not even draw. knowing they're going to come back to it. Like, I'm just going to process the information. And sometimes I love learning like that. I just kind of watch it a couple times, then I do the work.
The difference with this, again, in an art school is, in art school, they, we had criteria. I taught a upper level class in illustration, and the criteria was that the students had all the prerequisites to get into the class. The reason for that is you're taking everybody through at the same time. Everybody's looking at everybody's work. They're all in the same critique group, and it holds the class back if you're not at the same level. But here with what we've got going online here, you could get the class, look at everything, and be learning as you go, and you're not holding anybody up, and you can go through it as many times as you want. So it's hard to answer the question, like Jake, you said what the ideal student is, someone that's already had a lot of illustration training. And that's ideal if you want to finish the class and submit work to an agent or to a publisher right away. But the other student that I'm thinking of is the one who thinks they might want to do children's books, but doesn't really know what it takes, and isn't sure, doesn't know all the things that go into it, and really wants to learn the things that they need to be practicing. I think this is perfect for that.
Yeah. Do we have another question about?
We got a couple of people asking about we paid 3 professional writers to make manuscripts for the class, because we realized that everybody's not coming to the class with a professionally polished manuscript ready to go. That would be ideal if everybody wanted to be author illustrator, but we know that's not the case. Some people don't even want to write. And so we needed to provide something. So we'll be providing you guys 3 professionally written texts. They are 700 words or less. And so they're current in terms of what people are submitting to publishers and all that. There are 3 fairy tales. They emphasize fairy tale things. The reason that we picked these 3 stories is because they're highly illustratable, they're very relatable, and they're familiar to both you, the artist, and also the people you're submitting them to. Doesn't mean that this is the only dummy that you're ever going to do, or the only image making you're going to do, or character design. It's just a really, really good standard start for then you can learn a bunch within this kind of controlled environment, and then go to your manuscript that you're writing or that somebody else wrote for you custom, and you can take all that information. That's the best way to learn, is try it in a controlled environment and then add variables to it. If you start off with all these crazy variables, sometimes it's hard to apply the principles of like fundamentals that we're talking about.
Yeah. And we made one of our first videos in the class actually deals with this subject. It's like, hold on, stop. Before you choose a manuscript to illustrate, listen to this video. So that's in the class, but the nuts and bolts of that video is basically, there's nothing worse for a student to find out that their story really has a lot of problems than when they start to illustrate it. So in the illustration process, as you dummy it out, you're going to encounter problems. If you seek help through the Discord or through the Zoom sessions, and we see the problems, one piece of advice that we're going to give is, you've got a problem with your story, and the story needs to be fixed first. Now, what happens if you have dummied out the whole book and you've spent a lot of time drawing these sketches, and we say, well, this part of the illustration can't be fixed really because it's the story that has the problem. Well, now you have to go back and change all the illustrations. It's one of the biggest reasons why we're huge advocates of using one of these 3 fairy tales that we are providing, because those stories are proven over the test of time. You already know them. You're already very familiar with them. You can hit the ground and illustrate a great story, and you're not going to expose a weakness in the story as you start to break the text apart and as you start to illustrate it. And so if you don't have a really polished manuscript, one where you've gone to critique group after critique group session and polished it, or one that you're submitting to an editor and you've gotten their feedback, and your story is as perfect as you can get it, and you're ready to go ahead and break it down, we think you should use ours. We think you should use our story, one of ours.
And there's no reason not to. I mean, during the course of the class, in some of the demos, we've already started using some of the manuscripts that you guys have just as the demo. Yeah. And they're fantastic. I haven't illustrated any of these 3 stories, and just reading through, like, okay, I can do this, I can do this. I mean, it opens up all these different things. Again, like, the story is just the jumping off point. Yeah. Then you apply all this narrative technique and compositional technique and all that stuff. As a matter of fact, we're going to do a demo where we take multiple pages from, it's a little bit different fairy tale than you guys are going to get because we didn't want to do the exact ones in such a big demo. But we're going to do, what is it, like 10 pages, maybe five to 10 pages. We're each going to illustrate the exact same body of text, all three of us, and see how it paces different, see how we handle different spreads, see how we handle the design and the text flow and all that stuff. And so there's no reason.
Mine will be the best.
It'll be good.
You guys decide whose is the best. It'll be different. That's the most important thing. Will solve his narrative in a different way than I will and then Jake will. And so and there's no reason we're not just looking at this manuscript going, oh, this manuscript sucks. You know, if I only had a good manuscript. These manuscripts are great. They're fine. That's why we picked them.
Yeah. So just to be clear on that, it's up to you. You can choose your own story. The pitfalls, we just really want to make sure that everyone's aware that I've seen it so many times. I taught a children's book course at UVU, and I had my students bring in a story because I was new to teaching it. And I thought, just bring in any story that you want. And what ended up happening was towards the second half of the semester, I had so many students that were they were dreading the rest of the semester because they weren't writers. They didn't polish the story. They exposed all kinds of problems in their story. They lost interest in it and they didn't want to finish. And it was like a disaster. And I was like, and then I talked to a friend at another school and he was like, and he had come from animation. He's like, well, in the animation industry, they call them valid stories and they just want their students. And this was at Cal Arts. They only let their students illustrate valid stories. They don't let them bring in their own stories for this very reason. So.
Can I give a quote here? You can't polish a turd. And if you bring in a turd, all you're going to do is illustrate a turd. And you won't know if you have a good one or not.
You can polish it, but then eventually it crumbles.
Eventually, it's still a turd. It's just a shiny turd. I've taught classes before where it's a children's book illustration class. Last 10 to 12 weeks, and up to week 8 we're polishing the manuscript, trying to figure out what the actual narrative is, and then they got 2 weeks to draw the whole thing.
Right.
So it just doesn't work. A lot of times it doesn't work. Sometimes you guys are coming through and it's video only. We won't know which story that you're doing all the time. The other problem that I want to point out, by the way, if you're doing your own story, when you post them to the Discord and the social group that we're creating, unless people know what story you're trying to tell, all they'll be able to say is, oh, that's a cool image. Or that's not a cool, maybe adjust the content. Yeah, they don't know the story. They can't tell you how to adjust it for storytelling and for narrative.
One question here, I sort of see this over and over again, is how much time should you devote a week to it? I think, Lee, you kind of answered that. Ideally, you're just to water it down, like the classes itself, the actual sitting and watching videos is anywhere from 2 hours to 4 hours, maybe.
I didn't even think about that part, actually.
Yeah,
that's gonna be that adds to it.
So there's time you need to devote to video watching, and again, like you could see what the homework is and start working on that while watching the videos and whatnot. But ideally, what I would do if I were taking this class myself, I would clear a day of the week, and that would be my day to devote to the homework. So I'd probably devote Saturdays to homeworks, and then I would watch the videos. I'd watch one lecture a night all week. So it'd be like, put the kids down. This is actually how I would do it. And I've done this with other online courses. Put the kids down. It's about 8 o'clock now. The house is quieting down. I would go grab a bowl of cereal.
Here comes a kid back out.
Maybe a glass of milk or something. I'm already in my pajamas. Kid comes down. I tell him, not now. Daddy's doing his school thing. Go get mom. No, okay. Besides the kid thing. And then I would watch the lecture, take notes. And then on Saturday, after getting all my house chores done and whatnot and washing the car or whatever, I would just devote, 4 or 5 hours to working on that homework. That's how I would go about doing it. Like Will said, though, it could be right now, you just want to absorb all the information because, in the fall, you're going to have all the time you need to work on all the homework and stuff. So it's up to you. I mean, this is really a learn at your own pace type of thing.
And have fun with it. Make sure that this doesn't become, I mean, it is work. They call it work. It's our job, but this should be fun. And it is fun. And like Jake said, you schedule a little bit of time, you're going to find yourself just completely immersed in this kind of work, because it's like Will was saying, actually, it's not all the hoops you got to jump through in a university. This is what we're interested in. And so we're just going to take you deep, and we're going to say, look at this one little thing and think about this one little thing. And you go deep like that. And all of a sudden 4 hours has passed, and you look up from your desk and you're like, oh my gosh, what time is it? So have fun with it. Don't worry about too much about it. If you get behind, well, it's always going to be there for you. It's not like class just rolled by you and you can't do it.
Yeah. Like I during lockdown pandemic time, I spent easily $500, $800 on online courses because I was trying to learn some new techniques, and I thought now's a better time than ever. And they're still there in my folder. I made it through maybe half of them, but they're still there in my folder. And it's so good to know that, like, because I'm busy doing this, I can always come back to it and finish out some of the ones I didn't get to. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's just comforting to know that I have those there. And it's like, okay, when I want to do that specific project that I need to learn this technique for, I can roll up, I can do my 8 o'clock sessions and then work on it on Saturday.
And that's all online learning can kind of be. I'm taking a calisthenics class that's online. That's super difficult. And it's each segment's in 6 weeks blocks. And I couldn't even do week 1 on the advanced one because it was so hard. And so I just said, you know what, I'm going to do modified the whole time. So I did 6 weeks of just modified, easier version, knowing that I'll go back when I'm ready and do the full amount. So that's just sort of that's why this model of learning, I think, is so good. It's each of you hits it exactly where you are in terms of time, in terms of ability, in terms of interest, all of it.
Yep. Someone did ask a question. What is a dummy? We keep mentioning dummy.
That's Will Terry.
So
be here all week. The dummy is a sample version. It's a sketch version of the finished book, where it's just sketches and your text is placed, but it is the full book. You could print it out and staple it, and it becomes, a little Kinko's kind of copy book. It's what you turn in when you are presenting to publishers. And it's also what you'll pick your final illustrations from. So you do the whole book and you say, okay, I'm going to illustrate, these 3 spreads. They're the best ones. And that's how and then you maybe paint them up, and then that starts to give you a full portfolio.
And it can be digital or physical or both.
Yeah. Gary asks, how in depth do we get into InDesign and using InDesign? He sees that's in some of the offerings for this class. So InDesign is the Photoshop program that we use Will doesn't use it, but it's not a necessary thing that you have to learn how to use to be a children's book illustrator. But Lee and I love this tool, and it's essentially Adobe's software for making printed materials and for making PDFs and things like that. And so we're gonna take you through how we use it to make children's books. This isn't going to be an in-depth course about InDesign. Really, I've never taken a course on InDesign. Anytime I get stuck, I YouTube, how do you do this one thing in InDesign? And that's really how I've learned it. And I know enough now that I can get what I need out of it. I probably, I use $30 of a $200 program. I don't know, but it's enough to get these children's book dummies put together or proposals put together. And so we do get into that and show you how to do that.
And I built some InDesign templates for you guys that all you have to do is drag your sketches into them. So you're not even gonna have to make new documents if you do have InDesign. And I'll do a basic InDesign lecture that just gets you through what we're doing in this course. Like Jake said, InDesign's a deep program, and we're using just a little fraction of it.
So Moon asks, what makes making a dummy so complicated, as you alluded to, that it wasn't covered sufficiently elsewhere? The dummy is the book dummy is essentially the children's book you'll be reading in its sketch basic form. So if you don't know how to make a children's book, you don't know how to make a dummy. If you don't know how to make a dummy, you don't know how to make a children's book. It's in the dummy that you figure out pacing, you figure out focal points, you figure out how to get into the story visually. You figure out, is this going to be a close-up, or is this going to be, a point of view where we're far back, where we could see the whole environment. And what this course does is it teaches you, when do you do this? When do you want this? Why would you use that particular technique here and save it and not use it another place? So it's like the dummy is the linchpin of the whole thing. When an editor is, or an art director are looking to see if you have what it takes to do a children's book and you haven't done one yet, they're going to flip through a dummy and see, does this person know how to pace? Do they know how to tell a story visually? They should be able to see from the dummy that you have the storytelling chops, and look at that with your other finished illustrations and put A and B together to get C.
And sometimes you can make a really great singular image and not be able to make a good dummy. And so don't think that it's just making a single page multiple times and you have a dummy. It really does all have to work in concert with each other. Each page is a precursor to the next page, and the results of the page before it. And those need to go, you need to control that pretty heavily. Matter of fact, we went over just today, we were recording a composition video, and Will had all these different shots for kind of an establishing shot or a kind of an opening shot. And we just kind of go through them and say, okay, which shot would you use for this kind of a different situation? And what's the most common shot that people use, and why wouldn't you use that? And we get into those kind of details very in depth.
A lot of design information.
One good question here on, we're also streaming this on YouTube right now. Johnny says, I believe I'm in a good place to take the class and have purchased it today. Thank you, Johnny. We know you're going to love it. He says, cool. One question though, will you guys cover career strategies for when we've got the portfolio ready to start submitting? And that's something we do get into as well. You've got your portfolio now. How do you get an agent? How do you contact art directors? How do you share your stuff? We get into how should you present your portfolio on a website? How should you put together a portfolio, that you can mail out and by email out? Too many people are actually mailing physical portfolios anymore. I don't even think there's mailrooms at some of these publishers anymore. But also, I've got a lesson I'm doing on social media for illustrators as well. So I'll have some strategy and tactics that you can use in social media to help get your stuff out there too. So like we said, it's comprehensive, and we are going to cover a lot of that stuff. We should probably get close to wrapping this up. We've been doing it for almost an hour, so we'll just take a couple more questions here. If there was like something that we didn't can
they continue to watch this on YouTube if they missed the first part?
Yeah, this is going to be on YouTube. If you missed anything, you can sit back and watch this on YouTube. It'll be on there for as long as there's YouTube.
On our Society of Visual Storytelling channel.
Yep, Society of Visual Storytelling.
A question from YouTube that's asking, will we go through technical stuff such as standard export methods? We'll go into that, but how to color correct an image. We're not getting into the finishing part of images, so we will not get into color correcting images. I will talk about how to get color correct images for print and how it kind of relates to this topic, but not just individual color correcting a singular image.
Right. Yeah. So you will learn how you've got a finished illustration. Maybe you've worked traditionally, and how do you scan it in? How do you get it digital?
Correct.
Because publishers really only accept digital files these days. So we're going to just walk through, here's the steps you got to do to cover that.
That's right.
Any other questions here?
People are asking some SVS questions. For those of you guys who don't know, we do have a whole entire school dedicated to illustration. We're kind of starting to lean that towards getting a really, really good foundation of knowing how to draw, knowing how to paint, all the basic stuff that go into it, where you could then take a class like this and really nail it. So there are a lot of people asking about overlap. Some of the basic skill sets overlap in terms of drawing, like I said, drawing and painting and just basic image making, but the content here is super specific. There's no class that we have at SVS that covers this.
Right.
Matter of fact, a lot of the stuff that we're covering, we've never taught before in a classroom setting, just because we're going so deep. There's no lecture that even exists on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there's times where we do say, like we cover more of this particular topic in this class over on SVS. So your bases, all the bases are covered, but this is not one of those things where we kind of pick all the highlights from SVS classes and put them together in this. This is all fresh, all new stuff. I think that's it. We gotta bounce. We gotta get out of here, but we really appreciate you guys showing up. Thank you so much for all these questions. It's just we're excited that you guys are excited, and we hope you're able to join us, in this venture.
We are really looking forward to it. It is. Yeah. This is we have been wanting to make this class, by the way, for like 5 years.
Yeah, we talked about it at the beginning before you showed up.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Ironically, we were all doing children's books. So many of them. There was a period where all three of us just had our heads down. I was doing like 3 a year for a little while. Jake was doing a bunch. Will's, yeah, we were just all doing the books. But now all that stuff comes in. We're showing the process of making all that stuff in the class.
It's funny. We actually, on text, Will was like, why didn't we do this sooner? Now that we finally, have launched it and everything, why didn't we do this sooner? And I was like, we were all making children's books. We were too busy making children's books to make the class. So, yep. So I'm gonna end it there. Thank you.
Sorry for not answering all the questions. There's a ton on both YouTube and Zoom.
I think we got most of the major ones. The questions we're getting now are very, very individual. So anyways, thank you everybody, and hope to see you in children's